Hey guys, James coming from Kartz-N-Fartz. So we're getting ready to do an eco battery 70.4 volt install in a 2015 Bad Boy Buggie, and this is called a Recoil IS 4-wheel drive. This is all-wheel drive. It's got 2 AC motors, front and rear, and to be honest with you, I don't think there's a video out there to how to do it. So I'm sure the other guys have done it before, but I'm gonna take a swing at it, and we're gonna get rid of all these big heavy Trojan batteries. It's gonna lose a lot of weight. Now torque wise, this thing is a torque monster. It'll climb the side of a flat wall. But with that lithium battery, I'm real interested to see what the customer thinks about it. So anyway, we're gonna jump in on this, and hopefully this will be helpful. So here's the dash on it, and when you cut the key on, kind of looks like an RXV, doesn't it? Cut the key, it tells you what the charge is. That's a parking brake alarm. So if I let my parking brake down, that should, yep, that goes off. I'm going to try to take this panel off here, and I'm gonna try to see whether the eco meter will fit in there. But if it doesn't, I've already told my customer if it's a different size or it won't fit in there, we'll just unplug it and we'll mount his eco gauge somewhere along this area here. But anyway, let's take a look under the seat. All right, guys, so this is what it looks like underneath the seat. So we've got interstate batteries in here. These are 8-volt batteries. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got 8 8-volt batteries. And then there is another battery underneath this hood. So I guess that is 9. 8 times 9 is 72. It's a 72 volt system. So I've done some work on these Bad Boy Buggies where they had 12 volt batteries, but this one does have the 8-volt batteries. So you can see it's kind of a mess underneath there, but it's not going to be that way for long. So we're going to put some heavy duty cables just like they've got on there coming from the controller, and get this thing ready to roll. So I'm gonna go ahead and start to take all the batteries out of it, clean everything up, also get my tool to take this front system off, or front little hood off, and we're going to get ourselves some working room and figure out what we need to do to put that 70-volt battery in there. All right, guys, so I got the batteries out, kind of scraped a little bit of pine straw and stuff. I'm getting ready to hose all that out. Got that out the way. That's my main negative cable. My main positive cable's coming off this solenoid over here. So I'm probably going to replace those, but we'll see that as the video goes on. There were some other cables that went through that little hole right there and went all the way up to the front. So I removed the front battery. One cable came out of this side, the other cable came out of this side, got the battery out the way and the cables out the way. So this thing just shed a lot of weight. So there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 7 batteries, a bunch of cables, and a bunch of battery, kind of corroded battery hold downs. So we're getting ready to do a little bath on this thing, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the installation. All right, guys, we got everything kind of cleaned up, scraped up. That's about as clean as I can get it without wire brushing it and painting it. But this is a hunting vehicle. I don't think the customer's really too concerned about that. One of the wires that I took loose, this one, no, it wasn't that one. It's a test port. Here it is right here. So it actually said 72 volt battery plus. So that's going to definitely go to my positive lead on my eco battery. And then over here on this side, I had another wire that said 24 volt battery, and hadn't done it yet, but I'm gonna trace this wire back behind here where the controllers are at, and I'm gonna find out whether that went to a voltage reducer, because this vehicle does have headlights and tail lights. So we'll figure out what all that is. Another thing I found this all coiled up. It was hooked to absolutely nothing. So I'm not sure if that was an extra accessory. It looks like it's 2 flat spade wires and 1 ring terminal. So it could be a brake light switch. You know, a lot of the Club Car and Easy Goes have 3 wires going to the brake light switch. But anyway, time to move on to the next. Guys, getting ready to tackle the battery compartment. So I did some measurements on the 70 volt, which is laying right over there, and it will fit in between the factory battery tray, but it's going to be a little short here to where it will not rest on two different supports for me to anchor it properly. So I am going to use the kit that they provided, or actually that you can purchase. This is a TXT installation kit. So you've got the battery tray there. Obviously you can bolt up the 70 volt on those holes on the side. It also came with these brackets. So these brackets will bolt up on the back side. And if you see those tabs up front. So I'm gonna need to unbolt them up here on each side. And those tabs actually, I don't know if you can see it with the camera, but the tabs actually go underneath the body. So I am going to loosen the body, try to lift it up enough where I can get to that bolt. Maybe even pull the floor mat up and it might be pretty easy. And we're going to get rid of this factory battery tray and install the brand new one that Eco provided. And they got a whole bag full of hardware, so we're going to figure all that out. It came in a box about that size there. It also has a pretty neat little tray, and I'm debating on where they're using it because this is a hunting vehicle. It does get mud and stuff, and I'm thinking the extra plastic tray is basically for looks. I think my customer would be better off just having the mud fall to the ground rather than stack up in another place. Like I said, I did a lot of cleaning on this. So anyway, let me jump on taking this floor mat out and see what we can figure out. All right, guys, I just noticed this floor mat has a very straight cut. I'm assuming it's factory. So when I peeled it up, I can see the bolt that holds the battery tray in right there. Now it's full of sand. What I usually do is I take a pick and just kind of wiggle it around, because if you try to put your Torx head in there, it's just going to strip it out. So I'm going to get all this sand out of both of these battery button head bolts. And then we're going to take that loose, and then I'm going to start tackling the rear bolts. All right, guys, so I've got all this loose. I had to take a 1/2 inch bolt loose on the side. That other one was a T45. So they were little button heads that looked like that. So I got those two out. Like I said, there's some 1/2 inches on the side here, and also a 1/2 inch into the side there. I'm trying to give myself some wiggle room. Now, these bolts up top here, or to get this bracket off right here, it actually appears though it loops over, and there's gonna be a bolt hole in there. So my next step is I gotta take this back seat off. I think I'm gonna try to take this off first and see if I can just get access to those two top bolts. So a lot of work, but sometimes it's more work trying to get around it than just go ahead and jump on it. So let's see how. All right, guys, so the method I decided to get to those bolts, I took the back seat off. I actually took it off around the hinge just so I can handle it, and I'm by myself. There are 4 Phillips head screws that look like that. Screws, bolts, whatever you want to call it, with a Phillips head on there. And it is 7/16 inch lock nuts on the bottom. So it was kind of a bear to do it by myself. It'd been a lot easier if I'd had somebody hold, you know, maybe a screwdriver, a number 3 screwdriver up top, and me get underneath. But me being by myself, I was able to work it in through the little, I guess, inner splash shield. So once I got that off, I'm sliding this back. And you see I got a whole lot of mess to clean up, but let me clean up that mess and then we'll come back to where the bolts for the battery. All right, guys, I got one side out. So this side over here was very similar to this side. So it looks like this piece right here is a spacer, but you got to take that nut off, which is, let's see if I can get around here, which is right there. Those are 9/16. You've got to take it off so that bolt will have enough room to rise all the way up. So I did one side and I found out that it is a spacer. So I've never put a Bad Boy Buggie rear seat on, but that's what it looked like. So, and the way I've relieved a little bit of pressure, I've got my pry bar and I just gently lift it up on it. I don't know if you can see it, but it comes in just a little bit. So now the goal is to make sure that that bottom tab, which is to the battery tray, see if you can zoom in on that, but it's that tab right there, and get it to slide out. So obviously I need to do the other side, but I just want to do it one side at a time to show you what it looks like together. All right. And also, that is the 9/16 bolt that was going straight down. So that's the one that's on the bottom. That is that one right there. I did spray it with some WD-40 at the top and at the bottom because it's going to pull the threads through there. But that nut is welded on. All right, guys, so you can see the tabs are out. After a lot of persuading with my persuader bar here, I actually pried it open and then pushed the tabs out, and then I came on this side with the end of that pry bar and got it around there. One other screw that I had to take off, a bolt was sticking down, and that held, let's see if I can get around here and show you. I don't know if you can zoom in there and see it, but that is a bolt there that holds down the front seat back. So I took it loose, I just left it there so I can put it right back. But I've got that, the battery tray is loose. So now I need to slide it out from under here. I'm gonna try to do this without unriveting the body. I got a feeling the front rivets would be easy to replace and these would be easy to replace, but I think it's all along the sides and trying not to take this thing completely apart, but I need to get that battery tray out of there so I can get the other one over there by my workbench. I can get it in there. Hey guys, so what I did was I lifted up the back and I'm trying to be very careful. I think there's a thermal sensor or speed sensor right there. I'm trying to be careful not to touch it. So I lift it up and right here, I put my pry bar in there and I just kind of helped it out. Now, these tabs right here are grabbing this side here, but I think I can get it out just enough to drop it down and get it out of here. Got to be careful with this brake cable and also that wiring harness. So it's going to take two hands. Let me get this tray. It's out. So that definitely took a little longer than I thought it would. But here's the battery tray along with some excess cables and a bunch of wore out batteries. So let's get the new thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take, good thing is this battery tray comes in two parts. You know, that's my front piece because it slides underneath where the pop rivets are at. This piece here will bolt on like so. So I'm gonna go ahead and slide this part on there and get it bolted up there, and then I'll insert the bottom part and we can bolt it into these two bolt holes, which are right there. Not surprisingly, when it's in two pieces, it went in pretty easily. So now I'll get those bolts, I'll get it kind of secured in place. So what I'm gonna have to do back here is put my spacer brackets for my rear seat on top of there. The other leg is sandwiched in between there. That's where it came off at. And let's get that bolted. And one other thing, and it's just part of working on Kartz, the unexpected. So when the customer dropped it off, he told me he had some grandkids turn it over on the right-hand side. Can you see how it's kind of tilted over a little bit? And that one's tilted a lot. Well, guess what happened when I relaxed that bolt? That little bracket there is shifted to the left. So I'm gonna have to somehow or another pry it over in order to get my bolt started straight. I definitely don't want to strip a bolt that I can hardly even get to. But anyway, it's sometimes unexpected things happen. This tray slid right in. Amazing when you can separate it there and hang those up there. So I'll bolt these up. I'll go ahead and put my button head, T40, T45, whatever it was, tighten those up, tighten these side brackets into here. And also, I might not have needed to take that ½ inch off, but anyway, I did. I'll tighten that back up. And now I got a good, solid, firm foundation for that 70 volt laying over there on the ground. So let me get I got that secured. I'm moving forward to my charging port adapter. And as you open it up, you see all you have to do is plug in an extension cord. And actually, here is my wife's. I've got an extension cord plugged up to it, and it is at 100%. So super easy. Just unplug it when you're done, and there you go. So this cart has the 105, which is all I need. But anyway, we're talking about the 70 during this install. So what I did have to do, once I did a test fit with the charging port adapter, I looked at my holes and I had to get them just a slight bit larger on this metal body. And so what I did was I used what I call a step-up bit, and I just went a couple extra sizes, and now I'm going to bolt it up with the supplied hardware, the Eco. Got that mounted up pretty solid. And for some reason, it only mount one way. Maybe it's just kind of tilted a little bit because I tried to flip it the other way around and it did not fit. So I flipped it that way and it lined up perfectly. So once we get our charger installed, it does have a quick connect. So we'll move on. Guys, so I just took out the factory battery meter, and it was pretty easy. I just squeeze these tabs, if I can do it with one hand here. I just squeezed these tabs in. It came right out of the hole, and guess what? The Eco battery meter fits absolutely perfect in the same size hole. So this is going to really be a nice install. So let me get all that. So there is going to be a wiring harness. If I can tear it up here, there's going to be a wiring harness. There's going to be a 4-pin and an 8-pin that I might have to feed down through here, secure it on the frame, and then come up at the battery box. Now, guys, the reason I'm jumping on this video straight to some gauges and the charging port is because I don't have anybody here to help me lift that battery. And I do not want to drop it, especially on me. I don't want to damage the customer's cart. So we'll have that set down in there a little later on today when I get some help. But for right now, I'm gonna run my my cable and re-secure this back up. This is how your cable for your voltage meter comes. So I'm going to unwrap it. The side with the 90-degree angle, that will actually plug into the side of the battery right here at this DIN port. I know it's kind of hard to see with the lighting, but once we get it in there, you'll understand. So the other end, which has, which has these two connectors, and I don't know, maybe it's me. I'm just always very gentle when I plug this into the back of the gauge. I don't want to damage these connectors. Those are not easy to fix for me anyway. So I'm gonna feed that right through that little cavity and then go underneath the cart. All right, so I ran my cable. I left myself a little bit of room in case they have to take the dash out where it won't be so tight, but I've got it secure with zip ties, and I'm just gonna follow this wire loom all the way down and underneath the cart. If I can get in it, I'm gonna try to get in it, but if I can't, I'll zip tie it right beside it. Now I'm ready to put my hood cover back. All right, guys, getting ready for my wiring. This is my main positive that goes right here to the solenoid. The main negative was over here, so I pulled it loose from the back, and here's that wire. So I need just a little more length, so I'm gonna loosen up this bolt on the controller. Be very careful. Instead of it looping around this way, it's gonna shoot straight that way, and I'm just gonna feed it through the crack in the frame so it'll reach the battery negative cable. All right, guys, got the battery set down in there. The reason I decided to put the negative and positive on the passenger side, because it was just easier with the cables. So again, I may have showed this in my previous video. This is going to be my positive cable, and my negative cable is here. These are 2-aught cables. This is what the cart came with, so I'm going to reuse that. I've got a terminal in on order. It should be here this weekend, and so I will actually cut this off. These cables are very pliable, very thick, but that's going to be my negative cable, which is going to go there, and I should have plenty enough room to bolt that up. So, but it sits down inside there. And down there at the bottom, you can see where the 2 nuts are in there. So those nuts look like this. And I put the lock washer on, then the flat washer. It's gonna set down like this. And then on the bottom, you've got a lock nut. And these are 1/2 inch. So pretty simple. So let me get these secured down and we'll move on to the next step. All right, guys, so we got our charger here. And something the later model chargers have had are these 2 connectors. Now, this connector here is unused, but that connector right there protects the cart in case you've got your 110 AC power, you know, or power from your house plugged in, and it keeps the cart from being able someone to accidentally cut it on without paying attention and take off with the cords attached. So that will actually hook into one of the cables. Let's pull it up here. That little 90 is the DIN connector that plugs into the side of your battery. And if you notice, it has 2 of these CAN connectors. It does not matter which one. They do have different color wires. One of these is white and black, and the other one is brown and blue or purple, but it doesn't matter. But I am going to run this wire, because there's plenty of extension there, alongside the backside and zip tie it up, make sure it's secure, and I'm gonna plug it into one of those two connectors. It doesn't matter which one. Without that, this baby won't cut on. So you can see the other end of it. Well, I got two wires. Or two sets of wires. I've got the positive and negative that goes directly to the battery, and then I've got the quick connect right there that's gonna plug into here. So I'm gonna position, it's a little wider than the 51 volt chargers, so I'm gonna position it in here. Hopefully it'll fit, and then we're gonna secure it. All right, I got my light on there. So it did fit in here, so I'll actually self-tap that into that metal plate, so it'll be solid. These middle wires right here, they did separate, so you've got a thick one and a thin one, and let's follow the other end. So it looks like the thick one has two wires. That's the one we're not going to use, so I'll probably coil it and zip tie it real firmly right there. Actually, I'm not exactly sure what that's for, maybe some kind of test equipment or something. But the other one, which is the thin wire, that's the CAN connector that's going to have to hook in on the other side of the battery. So as I pull those two out of the way, there's two of my wires. The reason I orientated it this way, there's the front of the cart, is because if you lean your head over, there's a light down there on the bottom. If I pick it up now, you'll see what I'm talking about. See the green and the red, and depending on how it's flashing, depends on what state of charge, whether it's 80% putting out or 20% trickle charge. As I'm seeing these other wires come right by there, I'll probably make sure shift this around to where there's no way at all it could rub. You know, there's plenty of empty space or free play right there. And this wire right here on the left, that's the one that goes to my quick connect for my charging port. I'll make sure all that is neat. And then the last one is this one. And as I'm pulling it up with one hand here, you can see that's going to be your positive and negative wires. So I'll probably run it right along the frame here, zip tie it very neatly. There's plenty enough cable to reach the other side. And while we're talking about the other side, might as well show you that. So that's where my main positive, my main negative, that little DIN connector, I call it a DIN connector, that is where our little 90 degree is going to plug in, just like that. And then you just shift that collar, snug it up, and that is going to feed our gauge up there. So, and actually tonight, I don't have my 2-volt terminal in to correct the cable that this cart already had on it, but it doesn't mean that I can't go ahead and snug the battery charger, and I'm gonna let it charge overnight. So tomorrow morning, this gauge should read 100%. So that's not gonna hurt anything. And so the charger kind of acts standalone with the battery. It does not have to be running through the computer or controllers. But anyway, so let me go ahead and get that charger taken care of over there and move on to the next. All right, guys, so we got the charger mounted down. And as you can zoom in, I can zoom in there. You can see that I actually drilled the holes a little bit larger, and I put some bolts with lock washers, flat washers, and lock nuts on the bottom. Now, it comes with these. And for plastic, these self-tappers are awesome, but if you try to drill into this steel plate, it's gonna snap off. And if you don't believe me, try it. These self-tapping, they're just not strong enough to go through metal. Like I said, if you're gonna mount your voltage reducer right there or something on the plastic, it works great, but they just will not handle steel. So anyway, I chose to drill them out and had some bolts that I had already. So now what I did was I took that plug that I told you that was unused. I went ahead and coiled it neatly. I'm gonna stuff it there. The thin wire which is right here, this thin wire, and also the wire that goes to the battery, I decided to go underneath the frame, and there's no right or wrong on this, just as long as it's secured and it's not going to get jerked. So I'm gonna come along this frame wire, I'm gonna come right along there, and then I'm gonna come out on the other side. So right now I've got the main charging, positive, negative, and I'm gonna go ahead and group these together so they're zip tied at the same time, all the way over to the other side. All right, guys, so I got my power cable and my negative cable. If you remember, I'm still waiting to get a connector, a lug. Hopefully it comes in the mail tomorrow, and do a really good crimp on this negative cable. So I've got those plugged up. I'm gonna go ahead and cut on my battery. And when I do, my dash gauge should illuminate. There it goes. Let's see how much juice. It's not uncommon to be very low. Yeah, it's only got 6%. So that is not uncommon with a fresh unboxing. So it's still sitting at 72.3 volts. So let's walk around here to the other side. So with this charging port, I'll just take my grounded cable, plug it up. Let's hope that cuts on. Good job, it did cut on. And you can see how I just kind of coiled the wire, zip tied it really good and tight. I've got that other wire going all the way across the back of the system there. I did not coil up my little CAN connector that we've been talking about. And the reason for that is I still may do some wire management after the voltage reducer. So, but for now, that's just kind of laying around. But I did plug it up. Like I said, either one is fine. I plugged it to the blue and brown, but it doesn't really matter. But I'll get all that nice. So I did secure it to the frame rail here, so it's not gonna get snagged or anything. My customer did decide to leave the battery tray off. He said, yep, I'll take it in the mud. That's what I bought it for. So he'd rather the mud fall down than to stack up. So for now, I'm just gonna let it charge. If you look at the very bottom, it's putting out 14.8, 14.7 amps charging right now. And after about 2.5 hours, it should be at 100%, but I'm not staying up that late. So anyway, just kind of taking a slow approach to this. I have some other things going on, but tomorrow, hopefully, or either whenever I get that lug in there, we'll crimp that on there and we'll show you how to finish this up. But for now, excuse me, it's going to be a wrap. But man, I'm really pleased the way that gauge fit in that same hole. So customers used to looking at that voltage gauge right there. It's just going to look a little different with a little more information. All right, I'll see you when I tune back in. It might be a day or two for me. All right, guys, so let it charge overnight. You see it's at 99%, exactly what I expected. I actually phoned a friend and had my boy Billy come down from Billy's Custom Cables. These are 2-aught cables, very thick cables. So he had a lug, he came down here, did a professional crimp on that, got nice heat shrink on that, add a little piece of red heat shrink on my positive case. So now the next step is I need to mount my voltage reducer. So looking around and you know, each cart's gonna probably be a little different depending on what all they've got on there. No room on this side. I've got my solenoid here. I really didn't want to put it flat down there like I did the charger. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mount my voltage reducer vertically there. One thing I want to show you is if you look at the back side of the voltage reducer, you got room for 4 screws. You're only going to be able to use 3. See where that main harness right there? There is no way you're going to get a screw in there. So mount it with 3, mount it firmly. I'm going to mount it right over here, similar to this. So, and another thing that I'm going to do is for my wiring harness, which is here, I am going to run it either along that rail, secure it really good, or I'm gonna secure it from left to right so that I can bolt up those cables in right there. So before I start messing with this, I'm gonna cut the battery off. Should power, yeah, there it goes, it powered off. And then I'll be able to bolt everything up. One other repair that I ran into, or situation that I ran into, so this wire here, it says, I don't know if you can see it, 24 volt. So this 24 volt was hooked into some of the batteries that was in series. Well, guess what? I don't have any series batteries. I just got one lithium pack here. So that wire, I traced it. It goes all the way to this relay, and I've got it loose right now, but I've got a little push pin. It mounts right above the solenoid on this 2015. But I've tried it with the 13.5 volts before I mount all this up, and it does activate and everything works fine. So I'm gonna run 13.5 volts to it. If you're a Bad Boy Buggie mechanic and you think that it's got to have the full 24 volts to create a problem, hey, comment below. I'm more than welcome to listen to that. You know, the worst case scenario is I just order a 72 down to 24 volt reducer, and then I'll hook that wire up to that. But for now, I'm gonna use the Eco 13.5 output, and we're gonna see if everything works out fine. So anyway, let's jump. All right, guys, got some preliminary wiring done on my voltage reducer. So I did get it mounted right there on that rear inner fender well. You can see where the wiring harness comes under here. I've got two fuses here, one for your input voltage from your lithium battery, and then the output. And I ran the wires right behind this metal bracket that holds your two controllers. I'll zip tie all that. I came out right here, and before I wrap it up and make a real neat presentation, I wanted to show you the wires that are coming out of there. So I'll try to get that light out the way there. Actually, it's probably helping, isn't it? So your yellow wire goes to your positive on your Eco battery, and it does have a ring terminal on there. So I wired my orange trigger wire. That's what actually cuts on the voltage reducer. I wired it to there, and I'll explain why I did that in a second. And then there is a thin black wire, which in this case I had to extend just about 8 inches. It has a ring terminal also. I'll hook it to the negative. The other wires that come out of there are your thick red and also your thick black. So on the thick red wire, I plugged it, if you remember me talking earlier in the video about a, let's see if I can see that, yeah, a 24 volt positive. So that 24 volt came from one of the series batteries. So it actually excited or turned on this relay, which that relay, I just took it loose. I'll put another Christmas tree and secure it back up there. It cuts that relay on, which cuts everything on the dash. The ignition switch, the headlights, it cuts it all on. So unfortunately, there's no way for me to wire this trigger wire to the key switch because the key doesn't even cut on until the voltage reducer cuts on. So this voltage reducer is going to be hot as long as the battery is hot. So should not cause any problems. I left that label on there in case we decide to do something a little different. So down the road, I left that labeled. Now, what I also did, this particular customer only has headlights and tail lights, but if he ever wants to wire up any other 13.5 volt, he could always probe it with a test light. But I went ahead and marked 13.5 minus and 13.5 positive, and those are those two wires there. I did put a bullet connector where we can just unplug it really easily, but it's on there secure. We're not gonna have a problem with that. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do some wire management. The order that I like to put them in, that everybody else recommends, the thickest cable, which in this case would be this 2-aught cable, goes against the battery. And then I'll go thinner all the way out to the end. So I'm gonna start with my main positive on this post, my positive from my battery charger, my positive from my voltage reducer, and then if you remember there was a wire, let's see if I can find it. Okay, it wasn't that one, it's this one right here. So this was part of the Bad Boy Buggie that said 72 volt battery plus, but it's a pretty thin wire. So that's gonna be the last one I'm gonna put on. So that'd be closest to the head of the bolt. When I go over here to the negative, again, my main negative cable will go right up against the battery. Then I'll use my black wire here that goes to my battery charger, Then I'll use the black wire that I extended. Where is it at? It's down here somewhere. For the voltage reducer. So it is right there. So those are the only 3 wires I'm gonna have on this one. This one's gonna have 4 because I have that 72 volt positive wire that came up, and I'm trying to find it. It's in here. I'll make sure it's plugged up before I finish the video. And then once I do that, I'm gonna zip tie everything, make sure nothing can get snagged by a stick or a limb. And then I'm going to, well, actually that is pretty neat over there. I've already done that over there. I've done my charger. I do want to do my DIN connector. If you remember, that is the wire. There you go, you might see better. That is the wire that goes to this little L shape, and that's what cuts on your voltage meter. So also, I think I mentioned it earlier, we do need to hook this little CAN connector up, 2-wire CAN connector, to make sure the charger cuts on and off, and the cart cannot move without, you know, with the power cord being plugged in. So let me do a little wire management, get this thing looking a little prettier, and by that time, I think we'll be ready to go for a test drive. All right, guys, I think I'm about finished up with it. So did a little bit of wire management. I've still got my wires marked over there, and I'm holding my shop light because it is kind of dark right now. It's about 9 o'clock at night. Got everything secured over there with my zip ties. Everything over here is secured well. Got my voltage reducer, my charger. I did plug it up last night. It did charge it up. Actually, let's see where it is. So it's at 99%. So this particular model cart, when you cut it on, you've got a brake light. When you let the emergency brake off, the light cuts off. Headlight switches on the other side. Headlights are working good. Let's check the tail lights. Yep, tail lights are working. So I'm ready to go for a little test drive. Like I said, it is dark outside here right now, but I am going to test drive it, and let's see how this thing performs. All right, guys, got it finished. It runs awesome. It runs really good. These Bad Boy Buggies have a low speed and a high speed selection. Tried them both. It really runs good. So I didn't spend a lot of time in this cart before I did the conversion, so I'm just I'm real excited to see what the customer thought about it. So anyway, Bad Boy Buggie, that is a recoil IS. You know, I've never done one of these before, but I've done several of the 70 volts, so it really wasn't that big a deal. That little 24 volt wire that excites the ignition coil, not the ignition coil, excuse me, the solenoid, that kind of stumped me for a second. I did some research, I phoned a friend, and he kind of explained everything to me, and with the Eco battery 13.5 voltage reducer, it worked great. It worked great. So Kart's awesome, and it pulls really, really good. So anyway, I'm James at Kartz-N-Fartz. Reach out to me for all your eco battery needs. A lot of other golf cart stuff that I deal with, mods. I really like the mods product stuff, and also steeling, Red Hawk, double take. So I do a little bit of all that stuff. So there again, reach out to me. I've got, I can ship it anywhere in the United States, and I look forward to it. Hopefully this helped you out. So got any critiques, put them down there. I'm ready for it.